Welcome to the iPad Podcast, a weekly podcast from Mac's Future.
Okay, welcome to the iPad Podcast, and this is Lex at the MacsFuture.com website, and this is episode 67. I'm up to 67 of the iPad Podcast, and today is August 14th, 2011, and we're going to have a lot of interesting iPad news, iPad apps, and iPad things to discuss. Remember, this is a chit-chat-free podcast, and any positive feedback in the iTunes store would be very much welcomed. So let's get to it. Let's talk about iPad-related stuff today. Okay, so good news if you're into those iPad apps that essentially allow you to watch your cable TV on your iPad. Because some of the big boys, some of the big giants are resolving their big disputes. Now, if you remember, some of the big companies like Viacom that create the content for the cable channels are upset with some of the cable companies for just releasing an iPad app that allows you to see your TV content on your iPad if you have a cable account. And the biggest giant that took exception to one of the cable companies was Viacom. Viacom sued Cablevision. So if you have a Cablevision app, there's good news. I'm reading this on the Guardian.co.uk website, and the big news is that no one knows exactly the terms, but the lawsuit against each other from Viacom and Cablevision has been resolved. And it says here the terms of the deal were not disclosed, but the companies issued a joint statement saying, quote, Viacom and Cablevision have agreed to resolve their pending litigation, and the Viacom program will continue to appear on Cablevision's Optimum apps for iPad and other IP devices. So this is good news because, you know, I have the Time Warner app, and the Time Warner app gets a lot of channels, but it doesn't get all the channels on my cable box. And I would like to do that because it would be great to have it. It's a very handy app. So what this means is they somehow resolve their differences. Maybe Cablevision is paying some additional monies to Viacom or vice versa. But hopefully the other lawsuits, I know Time Warner was facing a lawsuit also, hopefully would be resolved. Apparently, though, the lawsuit between Viacom and Time Warner is on hold because they did agree to temporarily drop their lawsuits in June, and they're, I guess, negotiating a potential business deal. But think about it. I mean, you know, the cloud is where it's at, and I think the cable companies are struggling to define their business in the future, because the future is you're not going to really need a cable box, right? I mean, you're going to have devices like the iPad that can get content over the internet. So I think the cable companies want to keep their feet or fingers into the cloud world, and that's why they want to have a presence on the iPad. So hopefully this will, you know, result in getting more channels in apps like the Cablevision app and apps like the Time Warner Cable app. So let's cross our fingers and hope that's the case. Okay, so one of the more interesting articles, I guess that relates to the iPad, is something that the Wall Street Journal's All Things Digital published under Peter Kafka's column on August 13th. And he dug up a video or a column from 1994, and where people back then who were in the newspaper industry predicted something that looks like an iPad. And so this is interesting because even in the 90s, the concept of, you know, having a slate like the iPad or even the Kindle to read stuff was something that people were imagining. And there's a video with it, you know, that I guess was made back in 1994, but it shows, you know, the concept is that it shows that there will be something like a tablet to replace the paper. But I guess even back in 94, they didn't completely see newspapers being replaced by digital tablets, but I think it's there. So I guess the point of this video is that, yeah, the iPad is new, but the dream of having something like the iPad has always been there. And in this video, which is shot in 1994, they do have sort of like the concepts of having something flat like the iPad. So actually, they show a woman sitting on like a park bench, and she's using a stylus and using some big tablet-like device, and she's picking articles, and so the concept of the iPad, I think, has always been there. And it's just that executing it has been so difficult. Remember, Microsoft Windows tablets have been around since the 90s. So, the tablet concept has been there. What's unique is the way Apple executed it with not going to a stylus, but having this multi-touch interface, having the light form and the long battery life, and the ability to make all these apps that are unique to the tablet. So anyways, I have a link on the blog if you want to see the whole All Things Digital video. But, they say you can't really know the future unless you know the past. And the point here is, in the past, people were thinking about this sort of technology. Okay, so one thing that makes the iPad 2 so great is this A5 processor that's in it. Now, I had the original iPad, and then I got the iPad 2, and I really like the original iPad, but I like the iPad 2 even better because it's zippier, it's faster, and it can do more, powerful things. For example, the iMovie editing on the iPad 2 is much better than on the first iPad. And of course, GarageBand is really good on the iPad 2 because it's processor intensive. And, Apple is only going to, get more and more powerful processors for the iOS devices and the Apple TV. So the current generation is called the A5 processor. And there's word now that Apple is ready to start, producing the A6 processor, which would go into the iPad 3, I guess. So I read an article on Slashgear.com. I'll have a link to it that came out on August 12th, and it says, the title is Apple A6 Tipped Ready for Prime Time in iPad 3, ? Come Q2 2012. Well, right off the bat, one thing I like about this article is that it's not one of these crazy articles that says we're going to get an iPad 3 in the fall. I think that's just ludicrous. Apple has a big lead with the iPad 2. It's just catching up now to the demand with the iPad 2. So why would it come out with the iPad 3 before the second anniversary, which would be next April? So Q2 is like May, April of next year. And it says here that there's a report that according to CENS industry sources, the design of the Apple A6 is expected to be taped out in Q1 next year using 28 nm production processes and innovative 3D stacking construction. And then it goes on to say, if the timescales are correct, the iPad 3, which rumors suggest will use the A6 SoC, could arrive later in the year than the iPad 2 did, constrained by production availability. So actually, this is saying that the iPad 3 is going to come out later than April of next year, which is sort of at odds with all the other rumors saying that the iPad 3 is coming out in the fall. But here's one of the interesting things. It basically says that it's in A6 chip is in production trials, and that makes sense. If Apple is going to roll out something next year, obviously it's going to start testing it to see how well it works now. So that's not surprising. So I'm not sure what those specs mean, but obviously the A6 chip is going to be more powerful. It says here it's going to have 30% more power while cutting power consumption by around 50%. So maybe it'll last longer. Maybe the battery life will be better for the A6. A 30% power boost is probably enough for Apple. Apple doesn't need to double or triple the power processing. But extending battery life, I think, is a strategic asset for Apple, because I think what really makes the iPad so amazing is just the battery life is amazing. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. Compare the battery life of a MacBook Air, an 11-inch, with the iPad. You know, the MacBook Air has a little bigger screen than the iPad, but the battery just sucks down the power. While the iPad, you can really use it all day, and it's, handling the power consumption very well. So anyway, so I'm excited. I think it's just so cool the way technology progresses so significantly each year. It makes each year, if you're into technology as a hobby like I am, it's just fun, because things aren't stagnant. That, hey, next year things are just going to be better. There's just going to be something faster, something quicker. It's pretty remarkable the way technology moves, and Apple has demonstrated that it has the ability to stay ahead of the curve and be innovative and have people chase Apple rather than Apple chasing other technologies. Okay, so good news if you are into games on the iPad or iPhone, and bad news if you're a Nintendo shareholder. And I say this because there's an article now basically pointing out that Nintendo is slumping. The company that makes the Wii and a 3DS are slumping because sales of Wiis are not where they're supposed to be at least from Nintendo's perspective, and the new 3DS, which is its portable hardware device, isn't selling well. And I think it's not selling well because it costs, a couple $100 for the 3DS, and you get these expensive games, and the kids want an iPad or an iPhone or an iPod Touch with the cheaper iOS devices. Well, apparently there's a story out, and I saw this on Bloomberg.com, and I'll link this story. It came out on August 11th, and apparently some shareholders of Nintendo are pressuring Nintendo to release its programs and games on the iPhone and the iPad. And so the leadership there is under pressure, according to this article. Now, how much sense does that make? I mean, obviously Nintendo makes its money selling the hardware, all those controllers and cartridge games that are expensive. So maybe the strategy for Nintendo should be it will continue to make the Wii. Maybe the selling point should be, hey, we'll release some cheap apps on the iPad and then cross-sell the Nintendo DS and the Wii as having more power and can do more things. And so maybe they can get people hooked on Nintendo games on the iPad and iPhone, and then they'll want to scale up to Nintendo's old hardware. But it would be nice for Nintendo to bring that portfolio of games to the iPad, at least license it. So we'll have to see what happens. Obviously, maybe Apple will buy Nintendo. That would be kind of interesting. Maybe Apple should buy Nintendo just for all its games. It can't cost that much money. Apple has a hoard of money. So anyways, we'll have to see what happens. Obviously, Nintendo's in turmoil, and we'll have to see where their games end up. Another competitor of the iPad is also in big trouble, and that is Dell Computers, that company that makes those sort of cheap Windows computers. Well, Dell and its leader, Michael Dell, with much fanfare, tried to release a competitor, an iPad killer. That's what they called it, an iPad killer. And it's a device called the Dell Streak 5 tablet. And I guess it was like a 5-inch tablet or a small 7-inch tablet of some sort. I've never seen it in the wild. But there's an article from the unofficial Apple weblog.com, TUAW.com, that says, goodbye Streak, Dell Streak 5 tablet gets the axe. And it basically says here that the Dell Streak 5 tablet is no more. And it says, despite CEO Michael Dell's insistence that Android tablets would overtake the iPad, sales of the Dell Streak 5 were low enough in the Americas that it's been end-off lifted in that region. So they're not selling it at all. So it's just fallen by the website. And I'm telling you, I'm not surprised. The other day I was, where was I? I was in like a Best Buy. I was in somewhere that had both a Galaxy. No, I know. I was in Staples, and Staples had a Motorola Zoom tablet on display and a Hewlett-Packard touchpad. And first of all, the Motorola Zoom, which is running Android, boy, did that stink. I was playing with it in the store, and the interface was just really like not nice. I mean, compared to how nice the iPad iOS interface is, the Android interface of the Motorola Zoom, that's spelled XOOM, was just clunky. It was kind of hard to navigate. It wasn't that responsive to the finger, the touch, swiping and stuff. It wasn't that great. It was kind of hard to navigate, and it was heavy. And it costs very close to what an iPad costs. So, like, why would anybody get that? And plus, the presentation. I mean, that's the funny thing. All these other devices, the stores that sell them, do a terrible job showing them off. They'll have, like, one display. There'll be, like, some boxes of them nearby. And it's just very unappealing. And I also played with the Hewlett-Packard touchpad. Now, the touchpad has a much better interface than the Android Zoom. It did seem much zippier and much more like the iPad, but the model of the touchpad was very much like the first generation iPad. So why would you get the touchpad? I really think they're doomed, because think about it. The touchpad's also a different operating system. So right now you've got, Apple's iOS operating system, which is killing it in both the smartphone market and a tablet market. And then you've got Android operating system, which is killing it in the smartphone market. You figure Android will eventually become somewhat successful in the tablet market. And then, of course, there's Microsoft looming about with Windows to go on a tablet. So why would you get a touchpad? What confidence do you have, if you're a business or a consumer, that the touchpad's going to be around? The only confidence you have is that Hewlett-Packard is releasing it, but Hewlett-Packard doesn't have a history of making operating systems or making compelling software. So anyways, it seems kind of bleak in a tablet world for Apple's competitors. Okay, so some interesting stats were released by Marco Arment, who is the developer of the great Instapaper app, which I use both on the iPad and the iPhone and in my computer. And he basically, on his blog, marco.org, released some statistics by Graph and other means on August 13th, 2011. And what's really interesting about it is it shows how at least his customers have heavily adopted the iPad. Marco Arment's Instapaper app first came out, on the iPhone, and long before there was an iPad. But he basically has some new statistics that show that at least his customers, and he's got a lot of them, who buy his $5 app, a lot of them have the iPad. So here's his recent data. In terms of device class, in terms of his customers, 56% of them have iPads. In other words, he can tell who's using his Instapaper app. So 56% have iPads, 39% have iPhones, and only 6% iPod Touches. Now, here's what's interesting. The iPad 2's only been out since April, I guess. And the iPad 2 accounts for 27.2% of all his customers, while the iPad 1 accounts for 28.6%. So in just a couple of months, he's got as many iPad 2 customers as iPad 1s, which just really shows you if his client, customers are sort of indicative of the, iOS market. A lot of people are buying iPad 2s. Only the iPhone 4 slightly edges out the iPad 2. So basically, these are all relatively new devices. He's got 28% with the iPad 1, 27.5% with the iPhone 4, and 27.2% with the iPad 2. That means the vast majority of his customers have purchased a relatively new device, either the iPad 1, which came out in March 2010, the iPhone 4, which came out in June 2010, or the iPad 2, which came out in, the spring of 2011. So it's very interesting. And the other thing that's really interesting about him is that a lot of his customers have upgraded to the latest operating system from Apple, 4.3. So this is interesting because I think on Android, a lot of people don't upgrade to the latest device because maybe it's hard to do. So it's interesting that, of his customers, 82.5% are on iOS 4.3, which is the latest official operating system. So good stats from Marco Arment. Check out his blog, marco.org. Now, speaking of future technology that Apple may have, one of the fun things to do is follow Apple's patents, and there's a great blog called Patently Apple, which is constantly scouring Apple's patent applications and other patent-related or copyright-related filings, and they have dug up something really interesting and something I hope Apple does implement in the coming few years. And according to Patently Apple, Apple has been granted a patent describing ways to integrate small projectors into future iOS devices. And I saw this on PadGadget.com, which was citing Patently Apple. And the article says the patent shows a very advanced design able to project high-quality images and interact with the end user via gestures, shadows, and silhouette detection, just like Microsoft's Kinect. So it's not just a projector, but rather you'll be able to interact with the projection, and the computer will be able to sense your interaction. So, in the picture sketch that Apple, I guess, filed, it's not just the iPad, but also the iPhone and a Macintosh with some sort of attached device that would be the projectors. So in it, they also have an illustration of various image sharing gestures where you could, swipe on the images and see stuff or move stuff around. Personally, I think this is really wild stuff. I mean, it would be great if Apple could have an iPad that sort of projected a keyboard off the screen, and then you could use that keyboard to type. Because we've seen those projected keyboards. Now, not having some sort of raised touch, bumps for each key makes it harder, but it would be kind of easier if you could just project a keyboard. Also, if you could just interact with the projection, like if it could sense you, if you could move things around, you could play musical instruments that way. There could be like an iPad app where you wave your hands around and you, let's say, play the drums, and you play the air drums, and this projector that you're playing into could maybe sense your drum playing and replicate drum playing. So, at a minimum, a projector in an iPhone or an iPad would be great because you could just quickly set up a movie. You could project a movie on your wall. This would really do away with televisions. I mean, already the iPad is like a mobile television, but if it could project on a wall, it would really, really make it a threat to the TV industry. So if you're interested, check out my link to PadGadget.com, which then has the link to the Patently Apple article. Okay, so other big news is that there seems to be a whole bunch of web apps that are designed for the iPad that have been coming out in the last week or so. And this is sort of like a, some people are interpreting as an assault on Steve Jobs and Apple's method of extracting 30% of any subscription, sold through an app that's a native app on the iPad or the iPhone, or even ebooks being sold. And remember, Amazon, for one, has released a cloud app called the Kindle Cloud Reader. And it's a web app that you go to a website, and then you just save the website to your iPad, and you can read your books. Now, what's interesting, I'm showing it here. If you look on the video version, when you first set up, it says, do you want to increase your database size on your iPad up to 50 megabytes? And then supposedly you can download and pin a book to read offline. So I tried doing that, and I'm having troubles. Now here you can see, here's my Kindle library if you're looking at the Kindle app, and I'm going to download this Gadget book. And I got to tell you, though, to some degree, I don't find this to be as good as the native Kindle app. It's not as responsive. It feels like a little buggy, and that's, I think, all the problem with all these web apps. But they are getting more interesting. And so if I click download, now here's my downloaded book, and I don't know, it's not as quick and responsive. Like, let's see if I'm flipping a page, it just is sort of instantaneous, but it just doesn't have that same finger responsiveness that the Kindle app does, the native one. And here's another problem for me. No matter what I've done, it won't work offline. Now, this is supposed to work offline, and some people on the internet have said a workaround is to get rid of the cache in Safari on the iPad. Go to the settings, go to Safari, and do clear cache. Now, I've done that, and it's still not working offline. So here I am. If you're watching the video version of this, I'm online. So anyway, so that's one app. It's free. Just do a Google search for Kindle Cloud app and just navigate to that with your Safari browser on the iPad, and then it'll prompt you to save it to your iPad, and then supposedly you can launch it. But let's take a look at some of the other apps. Okay, so the other HTML5 app that is getting a lot of news is it's a magazine. It's a web app, HTML5 magazine, called Aside, ASIDE. And you get it by going to http://asidemag.com, and you just then download and save it to your desktop, and it becomes sort of like a Flipboard type web app on your iPad. Now, I tested it, and it doesn't work offline, so it only works online, but it's supposed to be more iPad, iOS-like than a web app. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so when you launch the Aside magazine, this HTML5 magazine, this is what it looks like. Now I got to tell you, I'm not sure if I did something wrong, but some of it's in English and some of it's in German, and I guess it's a German company or some German people who are behind the app, which is in beta. And so it says Aside beta, and then in English it says music, gadgets, videos, slideshows 360, and then there's a headline, Hotspot Tehran, but then there's in German. So I don't know I don't know if this is supposed to be like that. And so let's see. I don't know. It's a little, to me, it's a little buggy. If you're looking at the video version of this, it's a little buggy. Like you swipe it and you get to the next page, and there's an editorial, and there's a little curly part of the page on the bottom left. And if you flick that up, you get a little sidebar on the left that has cover, editorial, new and hot, I don't know, surfing, hotspots, Tehran, and you can scroll up and down the left side. So it's sort of like an index. So look, I will give these people kudos for doing essentially what's a web app. And a web app is, it's not being developed with Objective-C, which is the program that Apple recommends to develop native apps for the iPhone and the iOS devices like the iPad. HTML5 is a web standard, so people who create web pages use HTML5. But what's going on here is people are figuring out ways to make HTML5 more dynamic. And when the iPhone first came up, there were no apps, and Steve Jobs told people, oh, you can just download web apps and run it on the iPad. So here's the thing. I mean, this aside, magazines, it's definitely showing functions that I've never seen before in a HTML5 web app, but still, it's just not as nice as a native app. It's not, it's not as quick. Like here I am scrolling, by swiping right to different articles, and it takes a while because all the content's from the web. So this is, I guess, in German. You can then scroll down. So it's very similar to other native magazines in that you can swipe right to get to, well, I guess you swipe from right to left to get to other articles, and then when you're in the article, you scroll your finger up to go down and see other parts of that article. So look, it's a cool concept. You can go and play around with it on that website. And I am impressed, with what they've done. But again, I can't recommend it as an alternative to native apps. I just don't think it's there yet. It just seems a little too, like, web page buggy-like, and doesn't have the sort of fluidity of a native app. Okay, so the third major HTML5 app that has come out for the iPad was something recently released by Walmart. Now, Walmart has a video streaming site called Vudu, and Walmart has released a native, it's foregoing a native iPad app, because if it sells stuff through it, Apple's going to get a 30% cut. So instead, it's opting for an iPad-optimized website and keeping it, keeping all of the revenue. Now, I read about this on digitaltrends.com, and I have a link to that. But let's go over to the iPad and see, if you're looking at the video version, what it looks like. Okay, so to get this Voodoo HTML5 app, you just go to www.vudu.com on your browser on the iPad, and then you see this little drop-down window that says, now available on the iPad, stream instantly from the world's largest HD library, try Vudu for free. So I'm going to tap on that, and it says, connect your, try it for free, here's how. Watch Vudu now on your PC, Mac, iPad. So I guess I just click that button, and I guess it's just a streaming site for the iPad. I guess it's not an app form. Let's see if I save it. If I save it to my home screen, what it looks like. So I'm going to add it to my home screen, and there it is. And now I'm going to launch it. See, it with some of the other web apps, it just gets rid of the little browser bar at the top. So it doesn't do that. It appears to be just like a web page where you can browse content. So anyways, the point is people are using web tools to get to the iPad, and I think we're only going to see more of that. Okay, but before I move on from the Voodoo web app or web service, I just want to point out one thing. While you do have this Safari browser bar on top, they do something interesting to optimize the video streaming. So I haven't signed up for Vudu, but I'm going to play a little trailer, a teaser. So when you launch it, you get this unusual sort of like box underneath the browser bar, and it'll play in there. So here we're looking at a preview of Paul, a theatrical movie. But here's the interesting thing. You can press these little spreading arrows, and it fills up the screen. So this is sort of a different sort of video, I don't know, format that I usually see. But it's nice because it fills up the whole screen. So you can, watch it like you would some other movie app. Even though it's a browser, it does fill up the whole screen, which is kind of nice. And you also have the ability to use the AirPlay, although for now it just looks like audio streams out and not video to the Apple TV. So, it's interesting what people are doing to get around Apple's restrictions in terms of Apple taking a 30% cut on the native apps. So if you have Vudu already, this is just another way to see it. Okay, now speaking of movies and video, another free app came out this week that is a great app for watching videos on your iPad, and that's the Boxee app. It's Boxee. Now, Boxee is a service that you could use before. It was an app on your Mac that would basically turn your Mac or a Mac Mini hooked up to a TV into like a web TV. And Boxee basically was just a great interface to sort of big screen surf the internet, and see video content on the internet. Boxee also would work with whatever videos and media that you had on your Mac. Well, now there's a free Boxee app that works with your Boxee account on your Mac, and it can do all sorts of cool things. I haven't hooked it up here, but you can basically link it to the Boxee app on your Macintosh and then use it to see videos on your Mac. And the key is, though, both the computer and the iPad have to be on the same wireless network, I guess by Wi-Fi. But Boxee also has channels, and you can scroll through different content. And overall, the design's not bad. It does hook into YouTube. There's a lot of YouTube content. So if you had Boxee, Boxee is a great tool to turn your Mac into like a web TV, and the interface is pretty cool. It also works with, Vimeo content, and YouTube content, and you can scroll all sorts of, video content. So it's Boxee, Boxee. I have a link on the blog. You can also share. Stuff on the internet, and it's just another interesting video content app. I guess part of the challenge is there's so many apps now that allow you to watch video on the iPad in addition to just the native apps that Apple releases for watching video. So anyways, Boxee, check it out. Okay, so one of the more interesting apps that I saw came out recently on August 10th, or I guess I get updated on August 10th, is version 1.1 of an app called Converse by Riot, and it costs $4.99. Now, here's the weird thing. I mean, if you look at the video version, there's some iPad screenshots, and what it does is on the iPad, it creates two facing keyboards against each other. And what here's the description. Converse is a language translator for conversations. So I guess like if you're in Italy and don't speak Italian, you whip out your iPad, put it on like a counter if you're, dealing with a vendor, and they can type something on one side and you can type something on the other side. So there's a dual keyboard layout and you can have a real conversation. And basically on the fly it translates between English, French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and Dutch. So this is pretty cool. So if you're in Germany and you're having difficulty, and I guess it's designed so that one person's on either side of the iPad and they can just type back and forth, and it translates. So it's kind of cool. It's also maybe a cool way to train someone to learn a language. Somebody can be on one side and type hello, and then teach the person on the other side how to say hello in the other language. So I got to give kudos to these people. It's kind of a cool app, and it's only $5. And if you travel a lot and you're in these countries, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Holland, it's pretty cool. It'd be nice if it expands to be used in places like China or Russia or other countries that have hard to learn languages. So check it out. It's called Converse. Okay, so if you have kids, another app that you might want to check out, particularly if you have younger kids, is called Monster Coloring Book. Now, I've gone through some various coloring books, and it's you can never run out of enough of them because kids just go through them. They like the novelty, and it's also, I guess, an iPhone app, and it's basically a coloring book on the iPad. And the design looks kind of nice, and it costs $2.99. So you might want to check it out. It's called Monster Coloring Book from the guys in the book in the booth. $2.99. Let's see. Let's check out the iPad version. So I like the graphics. I mean, it's got kind of cute graphics, sort of innovative design. They obviously paid attention to design. And, it's only $3. Let's see, some of the apps, some of the reviews seem positive, but it's pretty new. So, check it out. Okay, so another app that came out that appears to be a somewhat decent educational app is called American Presidents for iPad by Peripatetic. And it costs $3.99. Again, it's called American Presidents for iPad. And basically it's an app that's devoted to teaching someone the history and about all the American presidents, which I think is a worthwhile endeavor. And again, it only costs $3.99. It seems particularly designed in terms of the graphics to be appealing to young kids. And, to me, it seems like it's a worthwhile way to teach someone all the presidents. It says that it has biographical essays on all the presidents from Washington to President Obama, and that each essay is 1,500 words, and there's graphics and an engaging interface and a timeline that provides context regarding when they were president, and some small passages regarding the events when they were president. And there's also a map showing the expansion of the United States, and over 300 vignettes and photographs, prints, and portraits. Now, Griffin, which has been around for a long time and had all sorts of accessories for the Macintosh, as well as the iPhone, the iPod, now has something that I think might work very well with you if you have a big TV setup and you have an iPhone or iPad. And I guess it works with the iPad too. And so what Griffin has released is something called the Beacon, Beacon. And the Beacon costs $80. And basically what it is, it's software that's free, that's for your iPad or iPhone. And then it works by Bluetooth, going from your iPad or iPhone to a little device that is an IR blaster that you put near your media center, and the IR signal from the beacon controls your TV setup. Now, IR is that wireless connection that a lot of remote controls work with, on TVs and DVDs. And for years, the only solution was like you'd get like that cable, you'd get like a cable remote, and then you had to it was a pain to program it to work with your DVD player or your AV setup. You used to get from the cable company for the remote, which you'd get this little booklet with these code numbers, and you had to look up in the booklet what code corresponds to your brand of DVD player or your brand of AV player. And that kind of it was terrible. Then a number of years ago, Logitech came out with the Harmony remotes. Remember them? I got one of those, and basically it looked like a remote, but you would download or connect it up by USB to your Mac or Windows computer, and you would tell on the software on your computer what kind of devices you have at home on your TV setup, and the software would download the code for the IR blasting from the Harmony remote. The problem was the Harmony software is kind of not that great, and so I don't use it a lot. And here, basically, the Griffin's $80 device is actually a lot cheaper because of the Harmony remotes. Some of them would cost like $200, $300, $400, and basically the iPad and the iPhone has a better interface. So this can turn your iPad or iPhone into a remote. Now, the key, I don't know how much time lags, and that's my concern here, because the way this works is that your iPhone or iPad communicates by Bluetooth to this little hockey puck device that's the beacon receiver, and the beacon takes that Bluetooth signal and then spurts out some IR signal to sort of tell your TV components what to do. So my only concern is how much lag there is, because when I have a remote, I want the remote to work really, really quickly and not take a long time to to switch channels or to switch devices. So I can't vouch for this device, but I do think it's kind of interesting, and the price point isn't bad, because $80 to turn all your iOS devices and your iPad into a remote master universal remote control makes sense. So I don't know, check it out. Go to Griffin. I have a link to it on the blog post for this podcast, and looks interesting. Okay, so if you always wanted a MacBook Air but don't feel like spending the money for a MacBook Air, and you want to make your iPad look like a MacBook Air and maybe have the keyboard of a MacBook Air, well, another device has come out that gets you closer to that. And I read about this on idownloadblog.com, and I'll link to that post. But there is a device called the Aluminum Keyboard Buddy Case. And who makes it? I guess MIC. So here's the thing. The Buddy Case, the aluminum Buddy Case by the M.I.C. store, sells for $49.99. And it has the same metal backing of the case to the metal aluminum of your iPad, and so it's like a cover for your iPad, but underneath it is like a keyboard, and it looks like a pretty nice keyboard. It looks like the kind of keyboard that a MacBook Air has, the same sort of big black keys, and it has the look and design feel of something from Apple. And so it folds over and protects the screen of the iPad, and then it acts as sort of also like a docking station. So it's kind of cool. My only concern is how much is the weight of this device. It looks really sleek. So if you're looking for an external keyboard to work with your iPad, there's a number of them that have come out that are built into cases. At some point, maybe I'll do a roundup of all that I see out there. But this is kind of cool, and it's not that expensive. It's actually cheaper than the than the leather smart case that comes with the iPad. I don't know. To me, it's the price is attractive, and it looks like a pretty sturdy keyboard. But you're going to have to actually try it out to see how good it is. Okay, so one of the most tasteless accessories for your iPad that I've seen come out is kind of crazy. And I read about this on FoxNews.com, and I have a link to it. It came out on August 10th. But apparently someone bought Bernie Madoff's wardrobe at auction and has taken the wardrobe, cut it up, and made iPad cases. And it's selling the iPad cases. And the article says the iPad cases are made from sweaters and pants once worn by Bernie Madoff. Now, if you don't know who Bernie Madoff is, he is one of the most infamous fraudsters in the history of America. He conducted a $50 billion Ponzi scheme, and the whole thing collapsed in December 2008, and he's in prison for something like 150 years. So the person who's doing this is a guy named he's a tech entrepreneur named John Vaccaro. And and I guess these iPad cases sell for a decent amount of money. Now, why would you get it? I mean, it's kind of what are you going to do? Go around and tell people that you have an iPad case made out of Bernie Madoff's clothes? It seems kind of silly. So I don't know anyone who's going to get one of these things, but it's kind of tacky and cheesy, so I can't recommend you doing this. Okay, so the website Cult of Mac shows off some products, and one product that it shows off that it found that looks kind of interesting is called the ePillow. And Cult of Mac, I have a link to their article, has a little video, and the ePillow is a device that essentially is like a place for you to park your iPad in like this pillow. It's like a pillow that's got like this bay in it so that you can put your iPad in it. And I guess you can store your iPad in the pillow, but it looks like it drops in and docks in it, and then you have the pillow behind it. So if you're like sitting on a bed, it's very comfortable because the pillow props it up. Now, I guess you could do this with your own real, like, small, pillow. But, the ePillow in the video does look kind of useful. Let's see. The price is it's $30, and it comes in brown and black. And you can go to the website epillow.net to purchase it. And it's $29.95, and there's a brown version and a black version. So look, everybody, and everybody can do their own thing. What's interesting is just the ecosystem for the iPad in terms of accessories is just tremendous. It's just massive. So it's a great way to give gifts too. If you have somebody who's got an iPad, you've got such a choice of devices to give to people. So check it out. It's called the ePillow. Now, reading cultofmac.com also brought to my attention another accessory for the iPad, which is kind of clever. Now, what it is, it's called the Mini Stylus. And there are lots of styluses for the iPad. I have one from Griffin that's pretty good. And what Cult of Mac points out, this little stylus is very clever because it's like a little nub of a stylus, but it has a little side, socket thing that allows it to be sort of attached to the USB dock of your iPad, so that it'll just cling to that and stay connected, so you won't lose the iPad. So it's a convenience thing, and it only costs $10. You can get it at JAV OEdge That's JAVOEDGE. And, basically it's a small stylus that stays fixed to your dock connector. Now, there's pros and cons to that. On one hand, it's good if you're like in a meeting and you bring your iPad a lot to meetings to take notes, if you just have this thing, attached. But what do you do when you want to charge your iPad? It doesn't look like it has a pass-through connection. Now, that would be really cool if it had a pass-through connection, so it always stays docked and you don't have to like undock it when you want to charge it. So, the website is www.javoedge.com, and they have additional, I guess, pictures of the little stylus called the JAV-Oger. It's kind of a terrible name. It looks almost like lipstick with like a little USB, Apple USB proprietary dock to the side. So, again, it's only $10. I don't know. To me, it's such a short stylus that it wouldn't be the, ideal stylus, because I like a longer stylus so that it feels more pen-like. Now, if you go to their website, they got other products too. They've got iPad cases. They also have touch gloves for $15.95, and touch gloves are described as keep your hands warm and toasty while you use your smartphone or your tablet's touch screen with the JAV-Oedge touch gloves. So basically, it's a way to use the iPad in cold weather. Your fingers, I guess, stick through it. It says the fabric glove lets you operate your touchscreen device so you can swipe and click on apps, etc. The touch glove works with embedded conductive material placed in the thumb, index, and middle fingers. So your fingers aren't sticking out. Your fingers stay warm, but there's some sort of conductive material on 3 of your fingers on each hand. So, again, this is kind of interesting. We're entering the fall, so winter's going to come up. It says one size fits all. I'm not sure that's true in real life. And it's for, if you have your iPad out in cold weather. So this website that sells this stylus that connects to your iPad, has some innovative things here. Let's see what else it has. The cases basically sell, the iPad 2 cases sell that they work with the sleep wake, and they have four cases around $42, $43 that are all sold as front and back cases with the sleep wake function. So, you could check out the site also if you wanted to get an iPad case. Finally, if you're looking for a stand for your iPad, one stand that I had failed to come to my attention before, but somebody I know is buying it, is a stand for $30. That's $29.99 from Belkin. Belkin's a very well-known brand, and it's called the Flip Blade for the iPad. And basically, it's sort of like this innovative design where you can fold up this rather compact stand, and you can unfold this like blade that comes out that then acts as a monitor stand for your iPad. And there's a video. I'll play the video as I talk about this, but it looks really kind of cool. It looks like very sturdy, but still very compact. So it would be easy to sort of transport and to use when you want to prop up the iPad. So, if you find that your smart case isn't sturdy enough, you could get this flip blade, and you can adjust it. The angle, you can sort of push it back. Now in the video, it's very compact. You can put it in the side pocket. But again, this is a stand that I haven't seen before, but I'd like to bring to your attention. It's called Flip Blade for iPad from Belkin, and it cost $29.95. So check it out. Finally, I want to comment on an article from the San Francisco i.ibtimes.com, and it's entitled Apple iPad 3 Blazing Fast A6 Processor Plus 10 Features Users Want. And basically the gist of the article is, the rumors that Apple's working on the iPad 3 and the A6 processor, but, this paper is saying here are 10 things that people want in the next iPad. And let me just go through them. At first it says a camera, and basically it says that, the iPad 2's camera isn't, good enough, and that people want a better camera in the iPad 3. And I guess that's right, although I've got most people who have an iPad are probably going to have an iPhone, and the iPad is kind of too big to be a real good camera to take pictures. So, to me, the current iPad 2 shoots in 720p video. I don't know if I need 1080p video. An HD display. Now they're saying that people want a better display for the iPad. The iPad display is pretty good now. Sure, it would be great to have some really high pixel iPad, with using AMOLED technology, but I don't think that's crucial. I'd rather have something that's lighter. I don't want the price of the iPad to go up. I'd like it to be lighter and have a longer battery and have a better processor. Another point they say is that people wanted fingerprint proof. Well, sure, I don't like the smudges. If Apple can figure out a way so that you have a touch device that doesn't smudge, that would be great. 4G connectivity, sure, I would like that. I'd like that in my iPhone too. Eventually we're going to get it when AT&T rolls out true 4G, and when Apple figures out a way for iPhones and iPads to still have decent battery life and operate a 4G, cell phone data chip, they'll do that. Now, what is 4G is just the faster cell data service that Verizon and some other phone companies provide. Okay, thanks for listening to episode 67 of the iPad podcast. This is Lex at the MaxFuture.com blog, and thanks for listening again. If you like this podcast or video podcast, please put some, a nice review or give me some stars in iTunes. That will help a lot. This is a chit-chat-free podcast. You can see the video version of this on my Max Future channel on YouTube, or on Blip TV has it. Also under Apple Things on iTunes. If you search Max Future Apple Things, you'll get the video version of both the iPad podcast and the iPhone podcast. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week. Have a great week, everybody.
This has been a Max Future production.